Okay, so this is what will be the final part 3 of this NDE. And let's see. Okay, so the last thing that we had that big Freudian slip about the garden and about mankind destroying Earth. Okay, so after some time, the light said, "Ask me that you do not know how to inform your world." I answered, "But you have just told me how to do it." However, he insisted by saying, "Now you are again a little and ignorant child that does not know how to do it." So I asked him again, being a little and ignorant child, I would not know how to inform my world. To my great surprise, the light answered in an angry and brusque voice, "You will know how to do it when the time is right." Wow. So this is when I was already kind of moving towards, who is this? Who is this light? Why does he seem so not nice? And what is really happening here? So tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm seeing this wrong, but I just feel like this personality, for starters, cannot even imagine that it's the Jesus that we've been taught to believe walked this earth. Like, it just doesn't sound like his personality, his character at all. And it just sounds very angry, arrogant, belittling, even petty at some points. So it just really, again, this to me is probably the most important NDE I've ever come across. Okay, so I'll just keep going here. However, I did not want to leave him forever, so I asked him if I could come back after having told my world and stay with him permanently. He said, "No, you have to go back and live." And this too, made me stop for a second, because this is if you follow NDEs, you know that this is a normal thing as well. There's something about, reminds me of the vampires and the charming ability, the ability to charm. So no matter how bad, you literally can have this being sucking your neck and taking your lifeblood, but you don't want to go away from it. You've literally been charmed, So I don't know what part of this experience made this child so want to be with this being, but it gets to the point where he's just like, "No, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. I want to be with you." It becomes a very kind of lovesick type thing that happens here, and I'm just not entirely sure why that would be, other than maybe some sort of metaphysical reason. So he says he has to go back and live. Although I still did not know my way back this time, I had no doubts whatsoever. If the being of light wanted me to go back and live, I simply had to do it. So he feels some sort of feels as if this power or this being is much more powerful than him, and he has his will be done, which is weird, because on this earth, the one thing that we supposedly have is free will. At least we believe that we have free will. And if that's the case, why would he feel like he had no choice in regards to what this being wants him to do? It did not matter any longer how it could be done. This light had absolute power. So again, he's for some reason believing he has absolute power. Nevertheless, I could still not understand why. I repeatedly pleaded, why can I not come back? Why am I not allowed staying on in your very love and warmth? Remember the person who had this NDE is German, and he learned English later, so maybe some of this is because of the translation, but you just see this poor little baby soul. My heart goes out to him. It really does. He wants to be with him and he can't. And this is I'm telling you, watch enough NDEs, and if you see that these people who have these experiences, especially when they meet a being of higher energy, advanced energy, they don't want to leave. They plead not to come back to this realm where there's just so much pain and suffering for many. Let's see, I think I had another comment here somewhere. Okay. Yeah, I'm just repeating what I just said. Okay. The light answered that no one, let me go down here, that no one could stay with him permanently, can stay permanently with him. And this is something else that stayed with me after reading this NDE, because clearly I have to work on my empathic abilities. Like I have to not, worry too much or concern myself too much about every little thing. But in the same way I was feeling very much concerned about this little baby soul, I started to, on one hand, I think that this being is kind of an a-hole, I'm just gonna say it. But on the other hand, if he really is maybe this gruff warrior type who is protecting our earth, if that's true, again, who knows, who knows on all this. It seems, and you'll see as we go along, as if he can only be by himself. Like he seems very much as if for whatever reason he is alone. And if you saw my previous thoughts on how Source itself, the being that has no beginning, no end, no mother, no father, no creator, the being that created us, if this being exists, which I feel that it does, but again, everything's a big question mark, but if this being exists, then ultimately, if you do the math, then it itself must also be alone to some extent. It's created us to not be alone, but ultimately, if you don't have any partners and nothing above you, then that's a very lonely place to be. And to some extent, on a human level, some people can understand that. So it just seems like this being, if what he's saying is true, and it's, who knows, that he can only, no one, and I'll keep going so you can see what I mean here. I'll just keep going. But he's alone. And, so my heart went out to him a little bit there. So let me see. Okay, sorry, I said that in that comment. However, I still was not satisfied. If it was not possible to stay with him, I surely could come back and stay in this bright world in which those two beings were already living. So we kind of forgot about those two beings. Like, I know this is like video 3, but they're still there somewhere. So there was, to his knowledge, because apparently there's a lot that can be taken from his sight or, veiled from him. To this soul's knowledge, there is the two beings that first he came upon that were just voices, and then this light being that he's had all these experiences with since then. But the light repeated, no, you have to go back and live. But why have these two beings been allowed to stay? It's a very petulant little kid. What kid is going to sit there and argue with this being that's put him on a mountain and is doing all these massive things? Like, this kid really is something else if you think about it. The light answered that even these two beings could not stay on permanently. They were only in this world in order to learn. In addition, he began to emphasize the importance of love and learning. He wanted me to be his apprentice. He the master, I the apprentice. However, I still could not see what love and learning should have to do with my wish to stay on in this bright world. Now this, I feel like I might have missed this, because this to me is important. Well, for starters, that he's saying the importance of love and learning. So this kind of, again, as much as I was, side-eyeing this guy, and side-eye a lot of the things that kind of come in, you have to discern. If you are a seeker, you must discern, because there really are the two paths and the two armies, if you will, in at least in this realm, that are going and fighting against each other, good versus evil, light versus dark. It's just a reality here. So this kind of, if what bad guy is going to sit there and tell you the importance of love and learning? I mean, unless this is a very big fake, a very big, manipulation, come on. So that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to keep an open mind. There are things that lead me to think, okay, who is this guy? He doesn't seem too nice. But then I have to also be clear that he's saying things that are, he's saying he's protecting the earth, and that he wants this being to focus on love and learning, right? And then so here he wants him to be his student. He the master, I the apprentice. So just so much in this NDE. Like, thank God for NDERF, and I'll put their website, NDERF.org, for allowing people to leave these messages. So whether this guy is living or not, like, this will stay forever. And I'll get into why that's important as well. So But yeah, very interesting. I had, it was true, to admit that I did not love the light. See? And here we go. And this is what I mean. I feel like there is some sort of power, in addition to all the other ones that this light has shown that it has, but the power to charm, the power to make one feel as if you love them, but you don't. Because he was acting really like, I can't, like he's holding on to his his leg, like I can't go. And then he's now realizing that he doesn't love the light. There's no reason for him to love the light. But I certainly was willing to learn everything that he wanted me to learn. Let me see what comment I had here. Yeah, so that's what I said. On that, the light started to, my great dismay, to position himself further back in the sky. So he's leaving, like, you don't have to go home, but you gotta get out of here. And I could not feel his presence any longer because the beam had been switched off. And this is important. I made the beam had been switched off. The beam of light, the light coming from him, the glamour, technology. Like, what does that mean? Interesting. I suddenly felt cold and very miserable. However, one of the other beings asked me to watch a certain place very carefully. So this sounds like more magic and gizmos and tech. Indeed, they urgently asked me not to move, but to fix my eyes on that place. So they are preparing him to get out of there. I did what I had been told to, and presently I saw this panoramic review. Very vividly and distinctly, I was stupefied. The images of this film moved very rapidly, showing me my past life on Earth. So they now have the capability of showing him his past life. So very important here and just interesting. Oh God. I could instantly understand everything that was being shown to me. I cannot remember any details because this was only an experiment to test my ability, whether I was able to understand what I was watching. The beings asked me several times if I could clearly comprehend what was being shown. I answered impatiently, of course, because I was slightly annoyed about their questions. And communicating in the this is in parentheses, in communicating with the beings, I always used my mouth as I had done on Earth. This was not the case when I was talking with the being of light. So I highlighted this. Very important to know that, because this is something that comes up in a lot of NDEs, where there are some entities that they are communicating with audibly with their mouth, mechanically. So some are communicating with them audibly, and other ones through telepathy, right? We definitely need to know why some beings would be through that medium and others through the normal medium. I think that will answer a lot of the questions that we might have about these experiences. Okay. Thereupon, the being of light started to show me my past life again, but this time the stress lay on the quality of my soul during my existence on Earth. And here's where a lot of people talk about the soul traps. I'll get into this in a minute, but just pay close attention here, because it seems like there's some level of shame and guilt that must be had in order to get the soul to go back to Earth, to feel as if they have to go back to do better, right? And I feel like that's what this whole moment is here. So thereupon, when I was watching my past life the first time, I was just very happy to be able to watch my former world and myself. I regarded this actually more as an entertainment than anything else did. That's what he's saying. Okay. I did not feel miserable any longer. However, the second time, former events of my life on Earth was shown with the emphasis on my reaction to certain situations in terms of love or nastiness. Let's see. Or even hatred. This was made quite clear to me, and I knew what to look for during the second review. Everything started from the beginning. I could not see how I had came into existence on Earth because I only had to mind my behavior with regard to love or hatred. At first, I was very satisfied that nothing was happening which I could have reacted with either love or hatred. And remember that he was only maybe 10 or 11 when this experience happened, so he hadn't lived that long of a life here this time around. Then the film speeded up, but there was still not anything for which I could have been made responsible. I was stupid enough to say triumphantly, "See, there is nothing." On that, I could see a scene in which my twin sister and I were quarreling. I could not make out the reason for the argument, but I instantly knew how ugly I had behaved. I said to the light, "But you must understand, this is bad, all right? But this is the way human beings behave on earth. You cannot really blame me for that." The great light did not blame me for anything that I had done on earth. Then I was shown some more nasty scenes on earth in which I had behaved badly. However, I still had excuses. Then I think the great light became slightly impatient at my stupidity, no doubt. Suddenly the film was accelerated to such an extent that I was unable to distinguish any images at all. Then it stopped abruptly, and I was confronted with a situation in which I behaved extremely badly. My behavior was tremendously enhanced. So I wonder what he means about that. Like, were they making changes, or was it just, how do you enhance the behavior without changing it? So that every bad aspect of my character stood out clearly in front of me. It was horrifying. I could hardly believe this character of mine. I was finally convinced. Such a soul could never stay on in this bright world. I had no right, no claim whatsoever. I was completely shaken and dejected. I wanted to go back. Yes, there was no other way possible. Then I saw the light disappear into the sky, and I heard a laughter in the words, and he really thought he could stay on. Then the being of light was gone. This moment just stayed with me forever. I mean, and I had initially heard of this NDE probably a year or so ago, but my goodness, what is this? What is this? On my best days, I don't believe in a soul trap. On my not so good days, I believe that both are possible, that this is an earth school and that got hijacked, and there's, some beings are doing some sort of soul trap situation and taking advantage of our amnesia in the situation here. But this just, my God, what is this? Really stop and think for yourself, right? And if you have any thoughts, please comment. But what is this? It's like they purposely were trying to just shame him and make him feel as if he was not good enough. And this is something that I just, there's no coincidences. I've been seeing quite a few videos where people are talking about that innate belief in a lot of humans, if not all humans, that they're not good enough. Even the ones who you would think wouldn't believe this, that you think they believe they're the it. There's always something deep inside that makes them feel as if they're not worthy of joy, of goodness, of light, of love. And they just, whoever, these two beings and this light being, put this all on display for him to make him feel just as unworthy, it seems. And so it's like they don't even have to force the soul back. It's just really just doing these little maneuvers and manipulations that will send any soul back, like, oh, okay, I can't be in heaven, I can't be near you, I don't deserve. And not to say, and then there's the other side where it's like, okay, well, maybe we really don't. Maybe we do have to clean up our act, clean up our frequency, clean up all of this before we can be back within the higher realms, just because of frequency and, like attracts like. But if, it's a question mark. And I think this is one of the most important NDEs on the face of this planet. And then you'll see how we almost didn't get this information. Okay. One of the other beings brought me back to earth. I do not know how. I only heard, while being tucked back into my body, a snapping sound like the sound that can be heard when you put the lid on top of a mess tin, securing it with the catch. So that is a very interesting way of hearing the soul return to the body. I've heard that people hear a pop when the soul leaves the body, but I don't know that I've ever heard someone saying that the sound of the soul returning to the body was like a tin can being secured closed. Very interesting and very mechanical. Just very interesting. When I opened my eyes, I remember starting to cry. I do not want to die, I do not want to die, and I do not want to die. Then I picked myself up, and in approaching the staircase, I wondered if there would ever be a way back. Whereupon I heard a voice shout at me, "Amend yourself. Amend yourself." And then another voice said, "You must kill your mother." My God. So I don't know if the amend yourself came from one of the two beings that were in that space, or the light if it was the light being, I think he would have said the light being, but he just heard a random voice say, amend yourself, so fix yourself up, and then if you want to come back, and then another one saying kill your mother, which I assume is that trickster voice that tried to get him out of his body in the first place. So this in itself too, I just stopped here and just think about all the people that have committed heinous crimes and said that there were voices that told them to do that. Like it's just what really does happen. People don't know, and I say most people don't know anything about the spiritual and metaphysical world, and in fact they're taught to believe that doesn't exist. And that belief in itself, belief that just prevails across all of or most of our societies, is so dangerous, because when people have these experiences, they don't know how to respond. They don't know how to protect their space. They don't know how to remove these demons that are hounding them and just literally just on their back, piggybacking all day, pushing them to do bad things and to say bad things. It's just very dangerous until we finally all wake up and realize that there's so much more than what we can see. So anyway, I'll finish this here. Then I climbed up the stairs down which I had been jumping so happily. I could only feel a minor swelling on the top of my head, which was not particularly painful. And that's it. He leaves it at that, but this is where it gets even more interesting. In the questions, he says something about himself, and then there's questions that they ask the NDEers. So he's a German male, unmarried, born in 1942. He says, after his experience, I was very troubled and I couldn't understand what had happened to me. I simply did not know what to do next. I couldn't talk to anybody about it. I wanted to obey the being of light by writing a scientific report, but I was unable to do so. I simply did not know how to proceed. Then suddenly a voice told me that I had to learn another language, period. So he's still being directed even after the experience. Doesn't know what to do with it or even who to tell, because people, back in that time would definitely put him in a crazy house for having had this experience. So just my heart really, if my heart went out to the boy, my heart went out to the man as he grew up in this, after this experience. At night, I felt very miserable. This went on for about 2 weeks, when one night the being of light returned. So wait for it here. So 2 weeks, this young boy feeling miserable, the being of light returns to him and says, I had to forget everything. This is key. This is key. Why would this being tell him to forget everything? I'm going to get silent for a moment so you can really stop and just let that seep in. Forget everything. Later in my life, however, I would encounter great misery. Relieved, I turned myself on the other side and fell asleep. When I woke up the following morning, I couldn't recall a single word. The power of this being is unreal. Now, there are some times when these beings, people consider them angels or, ascended masters or whoever, when they come back and they do take away the person's memory of the experience, and so that's why, I don't want to make this seem like it's completely sinister, but it could be. But there are other experiences where people have been forced to forget a lot because it would not have worked out to their best benefit in their life. Like, it would have actually caused them more harm than good. So it could be that this being, because clearly this boy did not just magically forget everything the next day. This information was taken from him. And the fact that he's able to write this means that it was returned. So that's why I don't think it's completely sinister, but it's up to you to believe what you want to believe. Okay, so for the following 25 years, I had lived my life the way I wanted to live. I became an alcoholic and resigned from church. I believe neither in God nor in the other world. And remember, he's doing all this because he forgot that whole experience. So people who are thinking, oh, how could you be in front of, have such a otherworldly experience and not believe in anything? But remember, this was taken from him. So, and again, the power of this being to take, we just adding to the list of powers that we just know from this one NDE that this being has. So we better pray he's on the side of goodness as opposed to not. Okay. Okay. So, however, I did develop a drive for learning English. So remember, he was urged to learn English, and now to learn another language. So he's learning English. The big change, though, came in 1980, shortly before Christmas Eve. On TV, there was a report on NDEs, and they were talking about a light. Suddenly, it struck me that I too had once seen a light. Thank God I could not recall everything at once. Surely it would have killed me. And as we talk about the baby steps, feeding baby food, the human body cannot deal with reality, really, right? Real reality. So it has to be done gradually. I personally call this my Saul Paul experience because it had a similar effect on me. Saul had been blind for 3 days and became an apostle later on and became a fighter against the devil. And I became a fighter against the devil in and about me. So remember, as a child, I even wondered, I'm like, why would such a young soul have this demon just all around him and have such easy access to him? It just didn't make sense. I'm like, where are his angels? Where's his guide? I don't know if I mentioned that in the first one, but that definitely was an ongoing concern for me. Like, where is this child's protection? But we forget sometimes that whether we're children or not, especially with the fact that we've been children countless millions of times, we're still these souls. We're still connected to something that is eternal. So we're all really ageless when it comes down to it. And we don't know what we've been in other lives or currently in other lives. You can have a being that decided to go and merge into the dark side for, thousands of its lives and have one that's doing the right, the good thing. And so I think that might reduce somebody's ability to protect themselves from these other aspects of themselves or just dark energies, because that's where they've immersed themselves. That's where they're vibrating. So that, not to say that's just me putting my own understandings here for you to think about, but it just makes me wonder. And apparently he himself felt as if there was some kind of devil within him, and devils around him that he had to fight. And thankfully he did fight him, because they were telling him to kill his mother. Like, what in the world? But this made me stop here as well, because I don't know the story of Saul Paul, but I was myself blind for 3 days, and then I was able to see afterwards. This happened about the same time as my last spiritual awakening, where I just out of nowhere was editing my book, and I just went blind. I'm completely, not completely blind where everything goes black, but my eyes were I could not see. Like, I literally couldn't see before me. It was completely blurred, everything completely blurred, to the point where I could barely function for 3 days. And so I tried all these herbal remedies and, of course, my frequencies and all of this. And it finally just got to a point where I stopped and just spoke to God and was just like, I don't even know why it took 3 days. I feel like I must have been praying slightly, because I'm a praying person. But I think it was not just prayer, but like extreme, what did they say? You have to completely surrender, like complete surrender, where I said, God, you know how much I don't trust people or anything. Like, you just know my level of trust issues, right? You know me better than me. So I cannot be this disabled for the rest of this life. Like, I need you to help me, please. I need my sight back. And then within the hour, my sight gradually returned. And so I can attest to having had that type of experience. And so I make sure to tell people about it, because you don't have this experience and not share it. You have to share it. All right, so let me move on. The positive effect of all this was, however, that I instantly got rid of my alcohol problem. Yay, good for him. The negative effects were 3 suicide attempts in 1981. Wow. Poor guy. The third one almost being successful. As an after effect of alcoholism, I developed a rupture of my stomach in 1986, whereby I missed the grave only by an inch. They took out my entire stomach plus other organs. By the way, no cancer. The being of light was right after all. If you guys can recall, when he was seeing the different visions with the being of light, one out of nowhere was about him being led down a hospital hallway on a hospital bed, and the being of light saying that he would be put to sleep, and but he'd be fine. All right, so in spite of all that has happened, I would not like to miss one single event of my life. And this made me feel a little less sad. Like I said, my heart went out to him, but it sounds like he's okay for the journey that he went through. Since Christmas 1980, I have been able to establish a personal relationship with the being of light by way of internal fights, visions, and auditions. I don't quite understand what all that means, but it just sounds like they are still communicating with one another. And I am now in a position to go public with my experience. In 1980, 1981, I couldn't write down my experience in German. And even today, there is no German translation because I have not yet had the inner okay from the being of light, who is our Lord Jesus Christ. And so this is why you're probably wondering, why do I keep saying, I don't think that this light is, Jesus? Is because this is where he kind of ends that. He not only is communicating with this being, or was, at the time that he wrote this, but it's his belief that that's who this being is. And please, in the comment section, let me know what you think about that. I just don't see it, but anything's possible. Okay, so and these are the questions. Like I pinpointed. I'll put a link to this so that you guys can read this yourself, but I think I just highlighted where I thought they were important questions. Okay. Did you suddenly seem to understand everything about the universe? I was at a place where there was absolute infinite knowledge. And so this is what I think I mentioned in the last part 2 of this episode, was that he seems so I think the only word I can use is, he's just unknowledgeable about what was happening, who he was, where he was at. Whereas most people by that time, like as quote unquote time passes, when you leave the body, you start to remember who you are and just have all the information of everything, it would seem, to some extent. But he's saying that he did. So again, I'm just very confused myself personally, but just wanted to make a note that he felt as if he understood everything, had infinite knowledge. Did scenes from the future come to you? Scenes from the world's future. In one instance, it happened exactly as foreseen. I was hospitalized. The second prediction about being a teacher has not come to pass yet. And again, I don't know when he wrote this NDE, but it just, here's the thing. Remember that the light came back to him and said, forget everything. So I don't know if that forget everything means like, forget it, you're not going to be a teacher. Like that's not the future that he would go into, teacher channel or whatever it was that he really wanted him to do. But is it that was taken from him? Like they just realized for whatever reason he couldn't accomplish that mission, or if this was written at a time and he's, now as we speak, doing that work. I don't know, but just again, one of the most interesting NDEs I've come across. So let's just go there. And it also would show that these beings don't know or cannot see everything. If he did not go into that future, if he never, to his dying day, never became that teacher of teachers, then maybe they really can only, like psychics can only see the possibilities. Okay, yes, a few weeks after the experience, the being of light came back to me and told me that I had to forget everything. Shortly before Christmas Eve 1980, I started to recall my NDE OBE in flashbacks. It took approximately 4 to 6 weeks to get a total recall. So they gave it to him back in 4 to 6 weeks, and that's interesting. My religious beliefs changed from being an agnostic to a firm believer in our Lord Jesus Christ. So it sounds like he fully jumped into Christianity. After I guess once these flashbacks came back to him. Okay, and it says, do you have any psychic, non-ordinary, or other special gifts after your experience that you did not have before the experience? Yes, I can look into the midday sun with my physical eyes without being hurt. I did this very often due to a longing to see the spiritual light again. This longing has gone now, and I do not wish to look into the sun anymore. That just seems like he's kind of forlorn, like he kind of just gave up. I don't know, very, very weird. But that's called sun gazing, and I actually started doing that naturally at one point after my last awakening. And it makes sense that he would be looking at, the sun is our star. We kind of forget that the sun is our star, and it sounds like this other being was a star, so the thing that kept coming to my head today was Star Wars. Like I think we really, if you think about what that being was saying about him having enemies here in our universe, our world, there must be some truth to the idea of Star Wars, that we really might be pawns in the midst of this game between very highly advanced, very powerful, good or bad, star beings. Like, just think about that. Okay. Are there one or several parts of your experience that are especially meaningful or significant to you? The best is the love of the light, the worst, leaving the light. So still that connection, that almost like obsession with the light. Have you ever shared this experience with others? Yes, just recently. Downright disbelief. Poor baby. At any time in your life, has anything ever reproduced any part of the experience? And we end with a resounding no. Wow. That's it. Finito. And like I said, this is one of the most intriguing, I don't want to keep using the word interesting, but the most intriguing NDEs I have ever come across. And because I don't know that anyone has ever, interviewed this guy one-on-one, if they even could, if he's still alive. But because of that, I just felt like I had to do my part by making sure that everyone that is looking, I don't have much of a following, and I'm, as it is, YouTube's trying to get rid of me from my comments that are pro-Palestine, etc. So I don't even know if my channel will be up long enough for anything, but I just want to make sure that these videos are somewhere out there so that people who are searching can find it, and maybe someone will have the answers to the questions that this brings up, and that maybe those answers will help us in whatever this is that we are in, and whatever our mission is here. And I just hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that it opened your mind to certain things, and also helped to add some questions or raise some questions that when you ask and you find the answers to, you realize the answer to it all. All right, so I'll leave it there, and peace.